Hello, and welcome to the CannAtlantic Conference, the country's first Mid-Atlantic Cannabis Conference, brought to you by the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists. If you are a part of the conference or you are watching this session currently, this session is going to be about COVID-19's impact on the cannabis industry and COVID-19's impact on community outreach and community engagement programs that a lot of cannabis corporations do to interact with community members and make sure that when they're entering a space that they have the community's input, support, and approval before they actually, build any sort of dispensary or build any sort of grower processor, and just make sure that they have open and a good relationship with community members in their neighborhoods as well. Part of this conversation, and the person who's going to be a part of this conversation, is Cresco Labs' Tai Duncan, who is the VP of Community Integration at Cresco Labs. Cresco Labs is one of the corporate sponsors of the CannAtlantic Conference. With that being said, Tai, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate not just you participating in this, but also Cresco Labs' support for the CannAtlantic Conference.
Sure, thanks for having me and for including us.
We're going to first start with some background information for viewers. Tell viewers, people who are watching this right now, who are you and what do you do within Cresco Labs? What are your responsibilities?
Thanks. So I am a Chicagoan. I am an athlete. I am now an advocate for cannabis use as well. And my role at Cresco Labs really is around making sure that we're the best corporate citizens wherever we operate. So we're in 9 states and multiple cities therein. And so we want to make sure that before we enter any markets, we are talking with local stakeholders, understanding what the needs are in the communities there. And when we were crafting our applications for licenses, we were also able to build in community planning that is the most relevant for that area. And so we're not just sort of saying, we're going to do this, and no one wants that. We're trying to do the work ahead of time and identify what the needs might be and how we're able to support those needs. And so my background, I started out by saying that a few of the things that I am, because my background is pretty diverse. I have been an attorney since 2008. And I have also coached high school basketball. I was a college athlete, and I've worked in both the legal and business sides, as well as working for a youth sports nonprofit previously as well. So I think my career has jumped around quite a bit because of sort of the core values that I have. I try to find organizations that share those, and they're not always in the same industry.
Thank you for that background. That's really important because you do bring a whole diverse experience and perspective, given your background, and an attorney too. It's not bad to have that background, is there?
It's helpful. I mean, this is a highly regulated industry, and so it certainly helps to be able to issue spot, and we work very closely with our legal team. So it's definitely helpful.
Seeing how you have segued into the cannabis industry, first, why did you choose Cresco Labs, or maybe they reached out to you and recruited you, but why did you choose Cresco Labs as the place where you wanted to work?
I was a caregiver for my dad when he was going through cancer treatment, and he was a medical patient. And so as the caregiver, I was the one going to the dispensary. I was learning more about the products, and Cresco was one that was consistently recommended at the dispensary where he had his card. And so I learned more about the products then. And then fast forward about a year, I was having this moment of, I'm done with my dad. He unfortunately passed away, and I was trying to pick up the pieces and identify what I really wanted to do. It felt like a reset button in a way. And so I said, if I could do anything, what would I do? I had some other ideas that maybe were a little bit far-fetched, but what I ended up sort of coming down to was I've run a nonprofit before. I've always done things with community everywhere that I have had the opportunity to work. And so I said, I would like to be able to make communities stronger with someone else's money, more or less. And so looking in the corporate world, trying to identify opportunities for that. And so I literally took to Google and just started, looking up community relations, corporate affairs, those kind of jobs. And Cresco Labs popped up with the Vice President of Community Integration and Social Justice at the time. And so what came to pass was that my colleague Michael Self, who runs our social equity program, the SEED program, interviewed for the same job. And we ended up they broke the job into 2. And so both of us were hired to manage the community and social equity piece of it at Cresco. So when I interviewed, they didn't have that vision, I'm aware of at the time, but everything we talked about really felt genuine. I was asking tough questions about diversity internally, about the commitment to community externally, and folks were able to answer them honestly. in the areas that they're looking to improve in, as well as things that they have already planned and that they've been doing. And so I felt confident that the organization aligned with my values. I had experienced, at least had been exposed to their products before, and am an advocate for cannabis use. And so I was excited to have the opportunity to join an emerging industry with a company that really has a social conscience that is genuine.
And you had mentioned this too, that you were also a caregiver. Was that your first entry into cannabis? Was that your first exposure to the cannabis space?
Yeah, I mean, certainly professionally, I was really unaware. I mean, I'd never been to a dispensary before. Before I was helping my dad out. I mean, I'd been, I think, maybe once in Denver, so I'd seen kind of what the legal cannabis market and the medical side was really about, but I had never really learned about like terpenes and all these things that I've been learning about the business of cannabis and just the science of it too. So joining Cresco has been an incredible learning experience, but coming into it, I really understood the social piece of it, the pain management. And since then, my aunt has also used cannabis. And so what I found is that my family members, many of whom are, they're conservative, older people, when I said I'm working in cannabis, they're like, okay, so you're a drug dealer? I'm like, kind of. I put drug money back in communities. So I mean, in some sense, yes, that's what I do. But they started opening up and saying things like, oh, I had a friend who is going through treatment, and what would you recommend for her? Or do you think that I could enjoy some gummies and that sort of stuff? So it was helpful to, I think, put what I was doing out there, because my family and friends, it sort of opened up for them to talk about their interest and their curiosity. And so it's been a really exciting part of the job to be able to share that with other people who are new to it as well.
There's obviously a lot of hesitation and downright animosity for a lot of multi-state operators and cannabis companies that are able to receive licenses. We always see the myriad of problems of people who are trying to attempt to get a license in the way that these different markets shape out, where people who should be getting the licenses don't get the license, and those who have the resources, the agency, the connection to stakeholders do get the license. But for in your eyes, anyone who does get a cannabis license, how can they better ensure that any sort of legalization that happens, if they're benefiting from it too, how can they make sure that cannabis legalization is actually benefiting populations who have been harmed by the war on drugs, have been impacted by drug prohibition, instead of just trying to monopolize the market that we sometimes see in other states?
Right. I think there's some ownership that has to happen, that there's a privilege in being able to own a dispensary. I mean, certainly the fact that we're not federally legal makes it challenging to get funding. And so there's a privilege of being able to do that. And that comes with some responsibility, in my opinion. And so if you have the ability to have operations in multiple states, being vertically integrated, those kind of things, then it's important to me that folks identify what role they're playing in furthering opportunities for other people as well. So one way, I mean, certainly is hiring. I think that there are one thing that I really think is impressive about the cannabis industry, at least I've seen this at Cresco, is that you don't have to have one certain background to have a job in cannabis. It's not as rigid as, I come from law in the business world, where people's resumes tend to be very much in line with what the job responsibilities are. I think in cannabis, being a newer industry, being more flexible, people can come with different backgrounds. And many of them, come with backgrounds that maybe involve cannabis use or, engagement with the drug before it was decriminalized. And so, these are, I think, being open to hiring people with diverse backgrounds is important. I think that there's an obligation to, at the state level, to think about social equity provisions in the bills in themselves. So making it a requirement to engage with social equity candidates for who are looking to open dispensaries or have craft grow or our infusion or transportation licenses. And so our company has, as I mentioned, my colleague Michael runs our social equity program, the SEED program, and we have an incubator that we do. So for dispensary, craft grow, and infusion. So I think that corporations should put the resources that they have and have earned behind those smaller businesses that are trying to grow in a meaningful way. So not just, sort of throwing money at someone for their application. I mean, certainly financially it helps to be able to provide that, but we do counseling through our internal legal team. They help with application writing. We help to pay the application fees for social equity candidates who are part of our incubator. And so there's just giving money or sort of giving someone a speech from a senior leader isn't enough. I think the investment has to happen in a more meaningful level, giving someone the opportunity to shadow the founder of the company, or talk to someone in marketing, someone in construction, to have access to a lot of the things that we as multi-state operators maybe take for granted that we have access to. So I think that the digging into the real meaningful work of engaging with folks who are trying to become entrepreneurs in the space is really important. I think acknowledging that we can't undo the harm. I think people say that all the time, undo the harm, from the war on drugs. We can't. I mean, there's not a person who can do that. There's been so much destruction, devastation of individuals and their families, and therefore their communities. And so what we can do is at least do our part to make the opportunities for folks to come into an industry that we know is growing, where there is opportunity.
One of the part of your role is literally community integration and working with community members and taking some of those resources that you have and applying that to help other people wherever Cresco Labs exist. Well, let's get into the COVID-19 talk, because we know this global pandemic has disrupted everything. I mean, we're talking virtually when we're supposed to be hanging out in person back in April in Philly, putting Philly physically on the map, but we're here. But part of your work focuses on community outreach and engagement. Can you walk viewers through the process of what were you doing? What were your responsibilities before COVID-19 happened, day to day or so? And now that COVID-19 is here and it's probably here to stay for a very long time, what do your responsibilities look like now? How are you still interacting with communities?
It's been a wild time for sure. And I think, just with the industry, it's different because we were still considered essential. So our business was still going. And so one thing that we did that changed during COVID was, because our employees were in the front line, they were in the cultivation, manufacturing, and the retail space. We looked around all of our different markets, so multiple cities in each state, and said, okay, what are the locally owned businesses that are open, primarily the like mom and pop, or even just like local restaurants. And so we said, our employees are working there, they're frontline, we appreciate them. So let's identify several restaurants in each area that we can order them lunch for on a daily basis. And so for a while there, we were able to provide lunches to our staff, but also doing it through supporting local small businesses. So one way that we shifted was through that. But before COVID, we were mostly guided by the commitments that we make in our state applications. So when we're applying to have a license in a state, there are sections on technology and safety, and where you're going to your business plan, where you're going to have parking and those kind of things. There are also sections about the community involvement you're going to have. And so every time we apply for a license, we have to make commitments that are unique to that area. And so we take it very seriously that us going in there and saying, here's what you need, or here's what we're going to give you, is absolutely the wrong way of doing community work. It's what we call a community integration, that we want to be part of the community and not just outsiders coming in, doing our business and leaving. And so we do a lot of just phone calls, outreach, networking, trying to identify when we're looking to submit an application, what organizations exist in that area, what are the major issues in this particular state or city, how do those issues align with our values and mission. And not everyone wants weed money, so there are certainly limitations in terms of what we can do, where we can support and who wants us to support. And so day to day before COVID, it was, there are tons of responses coming in, but also us being tons of requests coming in for support, as any corporation would get. But for us, we're trying to be proactive and strategic and say, based on the commitments we've already made, how can we support these communities? And then as we're looking to grow our footprint, how do we think through what organizations exist where we're looking to do business and what they might need? And so since COVID, I mentioned our employee lunch program. We've also done a lot with volunteering. So in the wake of the George Floyd murder, we committed to doing 5,000 hours of volunteer work as a corporation across the country. And so trying to find ways to give back and to focus on social justice initiatives. And some of these things became challenging because, of course, COVID limited any sort of indoor opportunities, and a lot of folks weren't comfortable even going outside. And so we have found ways to engage our employees across the country, doing things like we'll buy and distribute PPE for communities that are in need. We do community cleanups in different areas. And so going out there as a team, bringing family members and friends to come out and do cleanups in various locations around the country, food pantries. In our retail locations, we often do hold food and clothing drives as well. So folks who come in to purchase their cannabis can also bring in products we can share with communities. And so since then, we've been really trying to identify what the needs are where we can really provide those kind of services. And we do it through not only financial support, but certainly sending our folks out to be active in the community as volunteers.
Now, business is business. At any point, any person working in a corporation, there is always a bottom line to think about. There are resources, allocations to think about. There are ROIs to consider as well. And often, I've worked in community engagement, mostly online positions, but it's really about defining your values, your returns for the company, and showing your worth. How do you gauge and measure success of the initiatives and projects that you roll out, or that you're leading, or that you're a part of? And what are you looking for when you are thinking about any sort of project or idea that you want Cresco Labs to, support you or put resources behind? Because, I was talking to one of your other colleagues. It's like, sometimes it's hard to show the value. Sometimes it's hard to say, listen, we are spending money on these things, and we certainly sometimes are not receiving any money back. But how are you showing that this is worthwhile, that Cresco Labs should be continuing doing this, if not be doing more than they are right now?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think one thing that I see being important to my role is that we are community integration. We're a team of two, so we're a small team, and we are working with I would say, if not every, nearly every different business unit throughout Cresco. And so part of it is showing that there are folks in sales and marketing and social media and legal who we touch because they have either a need that we can help fill by making an introduction or engaging, helping them understand what we've done in the community that may help with our application renewals, or just sort of being partners on telling our story through social media and those sort of things. And so because we interact with different departments, we see our impact in different ways throughout the company. So I think that there's, while it's hard to quantify sometimes, I think for me, knowing that I'm helping my colleagues and that we have good working relationships to make this happen. It's not just like, oh, there's Tai over there doing community work. It's, as a company, this is important. We are committed to this. We need to all be in on this work. And so I do feel supported in that. I think that that's how I do see some of our internal successes happening, that other departments are able to do their jobs even a little bit better because we were able to help in some way. And community integration sits in the public affairs department. And so we work with government affairs, even with the real estate team. So there's a big community effort in the public affairs team to support our business when we're looking to expand our footprint as well. So I think that the foundation that we can lay in a community before we even get there helps our business. And so when we come, because there are community meetings when you're looking to open a dispensary in a new area. And so community members, I mean, they're honest, like, we don't want cannabis here, let's say. Well, our brand Sunnyside, it is clean and sharp, and our mission is to normalize and professionalize cannabis. And so we're like not the lava lamp in the basement kind of concept that people often think about. We're a professional, we're a corporation. And so being able to go in a community and say, this is our security plan, this is our the plan that we have for growing our business, is the hours we're going to be open, this is what our facility looks like. Those things have to happen. But the community could still say, but we don't trust you. We don't like you. We don't think you're going to help here. And so when we've already gone in and had conversations and identified ways we can help even before we get there, and there are times when we help and we're looking to go somewhere and we end up changing the location. We're not going to pull back the support. We did the outreach. They had a need. We were able to support. If we don't end up in that area, then we just did some good where we were, and then we can move on to wherever our next business is.
Has that actually happened to you in your experience, where you've gone and you've done this relationship building, you've talked to people, you've talked to organizations and walked them through what it would look like, and they've rejected you or rejected Cresco Labs? Have you experienced that? And if so, what happens after that? If the community says, no, don't come here, what does Cresco Labs do?
Well, so there's certainly times where I think generally cannabis, it's not so much, I think, a Cresco issue as it is, I think people don't always want cannabis in their neighborhood. And so, and I'm not, so community integration is not on the political side of things. The government affairs handles most of those interactions with the zoning board and other community groups. And so what I see of it is people is that we have a certain degree of credibility because we actually have done the work. And even if we haven't done it in your city yet, we've done it somewhere else in your state, or you can see that we've done it somewhere else in the country. So I think that there's that piece of it, that the credibility that we bring to the table that helps in these conversations. But there are folks who don't want, I mentioned before, they don't want weed money. They don't want to work with us. They think it's, not good for their brand or aligned with their values. And so in those situations, in community integration side, there's not much we can do. We say that, it's we want to always know what your need is. And it might be, what is your greatest need? Well, we need a new building. All right, well, we can't do that. But like, what do you need day to day, right? So, well, we have this online pantry through Amazon, and our constituents need hygiene products. All right, well, I can buy your Amazon pantry for you because it's going to help your business. And it's one less expense for you. So that's how we build those relationships. And I think that people see that we actually are going to come and do the work. We're going to sell the products. We're going to put the money back in the communities. And so that has certainly helped with our business model as well.
I would be remiss not to make note of this, is that, the cannabis industry, specifically cannabis corporations, are very white. It's a very white centered, it's a very white male dominated industry. What does it mean to occupy a very high level position where there's not many of us in this position? How do you navigate a position where there's not a lot of potential support, whether it's Cresco Labs or just kind of seeing how other people are treated? How do you take this position, really, knowing that there's a very lack of diversity and ownership at the top?
I feel a huge responsibility to support initiatives that help Black and Brown people. I mean, that's we have been the most adversely affected by the war on drugs, and so within the company, I think that hiring Michael, people who are doing this work, it shows that the company really cares about it. We're building a team. They're investing money in us, in our team. They're giving us resources, and so I think, from a corporate standpoint, I feel supported, and I feel like there's an investment in the work that my team does beyond just a box check. It's something that I think our leadership is proud that we are engaged in communities. And we see when we go to these meetings that people say, oh, well, if it's between Cresco and somewhere else, if we've done more to support, or at least to ask the questions, even if we haven't supported yet, I do feel like that people see that we're making that effort. And so feeling supported in this space, and having a position where I can impact change, that certainly, I wouldn't feel as good about the opportunity if I didn't feel that internally we were supported in the work that we do and that our voice was heard. I don't worry about what I say. When I'm at, being at Cresco, I've been there for nearly a year now. I've made great friends. I feel really lucky to be on the public affairs team where we work so hard, but we're all committed to doing the right thing for our company and for our communities. We know we're not a nonprofit. We're not, that's not what we do. But I do feel like the support that I have gives me the wings to do some things and to say some things that may be unpopular. I mean, when I was interviewing, I said, well, do you all care about diversity inside or just how it looks outside? And I think they were like, this girl, but I mean, their answer was good. It was that they were working on it, that they had these plans. And so I think that, and by the time, even from when I interviewed to when I started there, I saw visibly more diversity in the company at different levels. And so I know that we're doing what we say we're going to do, but that it's my job to take that platform and be able to make the impact, because I can make those decisions for my team to impact our company. And so, when it comes to hiring and suppliers, business diversity, I try to be really conscious of, to the extent that I can, working with people who are Black and Brown business owners, trying to improve opportunities there. I think that, unlike law, where I came from originally, we're still writing this out. We're still figuring out what the structure is for the cannabis industry. And so there aren't these sort of rigid boxes where a woman can be and a Black woman can be, or a Black person can be. We're still figuring that part out. And so I get to help with that. And I feel excited that I can bring diverse team members on and bring up, there are challenges. I'll say, well, this actually, have you thought about it from this perspective? And I feel like my voice is heard, and I can help craft what my career and what my opportunities look like, because I'm trusted and because my company believes the work that I do is important.
What are some hardships that you face in your job right now? What's literally the most difficult job or most difficult responsibility that you have, given the fact that, the pandemics are here? There's also a national uprising to abolish police. How has that influenced your role right now, and what are the hurdles that you're currently facing?
I think just a resource hurdle, not so much financially as it is just human. I would love to have a staff of 10, 15 people, right? I mean, that's everyone's dream to be able to,
Are you lobbying for that
right?
expansion?
Right? I'm like, let's grow it, right? But I think, because of COVID, other things, we had to sort of slow down a bit of that expansion as well. But, that's really, it's a capacity issue for me that there's so much need. We, of course, can't fill it all, but being able to get my arms around every area that we're in without the staff to do it. And so what we've done is really rely on our teams on the ground, the retail, cultivation, and manufacturing, and they really help us because they live and work in the communities to identify how we can best serve. And so it's been, in the absence of having unlimited, staff and support, we've been able to work together as teams across the country to still have an impact in a way that's meaningful without me having to be physically there. But there's so much I want to do, and there's so much that people ask for us to do. We can't. There's a capacity to actually do all of the things that certainly is a limitation. But I know there's just I think about the opportunities that we have um, to grow programming that will have a longer term impact. So, can we turn a space that we currently own into, a training facility for social equity applicants? Like, can we be creative about ways that we use the things we already have or the people we already have? Can we use our IT staff to help, a small nonprofit with their computer issues? Can our marketing team help do some promotions for an organization? Like, being creative in times where money is, it's something to certainly be considered more than other times. And I'm always trying to think of ways to be creative and supportive, knowing that we can't do everything, but we want to make sure that we're doing things that are in line with our uh, corporate objectives, the commitments that we make, and the needs in the communities.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. We are currently wrapping up this 30-minute discussion, and then we will hopefully be able to answer some sort of questions for those who may have questions about Cresco Labs or for you and about your position. Wrapping this up, what's one takeaway that you want viewers to walk away with when it comes to Cresco Labs, when it comes to you and your role? What's something that you want viewers to really to understand about, your role, your job, and the company that you work for?
I think one thing I think is just opportunity that, this job, I felt like it was written for me, the job description, it's all these things I've worked toward in different jobs to help me to get to this point. But I think it's because the industry, as I mentioned, it is growing and there's a lot of opportunity there. I want people to think about, even though there's this, concept of big white cannabis and it's like this big bad, corporation, there are so many opportunities I think that exist and that will be coming out for people with diverse backgrounds and folks uh, who are just not the traditional candidates you see for corporate jobs. I hope that people look at, someone with my background, done a lot of different things, who was in the brink of just sort of figuring out what was next and took a leap into cannabis. And I think I hope people see the industry as being one that provides a lot of opportunity. And I think our company, we're always growing, we're always learning, but the fact that I think our heart's in the right place and we're trying to do the work, that to me is what's most important. I really believe that this is it's woven into the fiber of who we are and what we do. And I'm really lucky to get to help execute some of that vision.
Tai Duncan, VP of Community Integration at Cresco Labs. Thank you so much for your time. And again, thank you for supporting the CannAtlantic Conference.
Thank you.